Hey, what's up everybody? So it's lift time. We're going to be doing the lift on the 93 OBS GMC. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be using a rough country lift. We're going to put it on there and we're going to make sure it functions the way it's supposed to. So let's get into this. All right, so I got this thing supported. It takes a 21 millimeter on the U-bolts here for the rear end. Now I've also got pressure off this with the jack, and you'll see why here in just a second. All right, well that one broke, and that's good. Doesn't bother me any. I'll tell you why. I've got bolts to replace it. So if it breaks, don't freak out. It is kind of scary because you've got a spring back there and you're like, what's happening? But, you know, it comes. All right, so I'm going to use a die grinder. Reason being is because honestly I just didn't feel like dragging the torch back here, but there's a fuel tank, so there'd be a lot of fire, so I figured, hey, you know what, this is a little less evasive and does the same thing. So cut away. Alright, let's let the jack down. Hopefully this thing will go ahead and break loose, so let's see what's going to happen. Sometimes you got to use a chisel or a hammer to give it a little whack and it'll come apart, but let's see. All right, well that came loose a lot easier than I thought it would. So I don't know if we've got enough room to put the block in here or not. Just about. I don't know if this will raise up any or if it's just all on the spring weight. Might put another jack on there. I could probably let it on down a little more. I don't know if it's going to come down anymore or not. I think that's about the max on it. Yeah, so okay. So basically all I did was, you saw me, I just pried it over and made sure the nub's centered up, and then I jacked the axle back up to the leaf spring. All right, so this side I'm just going to run in time lapse. You saw how I did the other side, exact same thing on this side. If I run into something that's a little different, I'll stop and I'll show you what's going on. So let's get this done. All right, as you saw, this side was just so rusted, they just broke. So I just put the bar in there, snapped them off. Quick and easy, moving on. Okay, so this side didn't pop off like the other one, so I'm gonna take a hammer and a chisel and hopefully that'll get it loose. So let's go ahead and give it a whirl here. There's that. Now what I normally do is I'll just take it and give it. All right, so I did end up having to use a bottle jack on this side. One reason is because I already tightened the other side down. I kind of wasn't thinking when I did that, and that kind of just locked it all into position. But even at that, I still probably would have had to use a bottle jack on this side. I normally don't like doing that, but I think I can get enough room to where it doesn't really bother the springs too bad to get it up in there. And let's just see how it goes. So let's go ahead and get this block in, and then we'll tighten it down. All right, and while we're back here, I'm gonna go ahead and put the new shocks on. It came with the kit. Obviously, so we got the back done. It is definitely sitting taller in the back. So, like I said, it's something you're definitely gonna be able to see a difference. See if you can check this out here. I want you to see if you can notice anything. But like I said, if you look, it's much taller in the back than it is in the front. I don't know if you can tell. What I did is I went ahead and got the new shocks on it. I got the blocks and everything already ready on the front, on the rear end. Now we got to do the front end. Now something I didn't say is what kind of shocks they are. And there's a reason I didn't say what kind of shocks they are. They know they're getting shocks, but they don't know to the extent of what kind of shocks they're getting. And let's just put it this way, you're gonna love it, but it's gonna actually help with the functionality of this truck. So let's get into it. All right, we're getting to the front of the truck now. So on the instructions, which I'm going to go off the instructions from Rough Country, so that way if you ever do one of these, you might be able to watch this video and say, hey look, I can put a lift kit on one of these. But it says to measure your torsion bar adjuster bolt. I measured it. It came in at like 1.25 inches on this particular truck. Doesn't mean it's going to be the same on yours. So actually measure it. There are differences. And then it says to remove the bolt. So that's what I'm getting ready to do now, is to go ahead and remove it, and then we'll start taking some parts off. Okay, so I got it loose, but I'm going to show you what I ran into, because this truck has never had these apart before, and you may run into this on yours. So 1 second, let me get down here and I'll show you. So basically you'll need one of these. It says to take a hammer and a punch to knock the torsion bars forward, but they didn't mention what happens if they're frozen in place. So what I had to do was I had to unbolt the cross member, and the cross member is held in there with 2 18s and a 15 in the middle. So once I unbolted those, like I said, then I was able to take a hammer and knock it backwards and get the keys out. So, because then they just slide right out once the bars, you know, far enough away from the, you know, cross member there. So hopefully you don't run into this issue, but if you do, now you know. Okay, next it says to remove the brake caliper. To do this, you will need an Allen wrench. It's either a 3/8 Allen wrench or this piece right that you can get. It just goes in here. Make sure I've got it going in the right direction. Yep, sure do. I'm sure this booger is going to be tight. So, of course it's going to be super tight. Probably hasn't been off there for who knows how long. So I will need the persuader. And yes, I know, I am beating on a ratchet with a hammer. Some of you guys probably just thought, why? No. But sometimes it is what it is. It's not like it's a snap-on or a Matco. Yes, I am using a Craftsman to do that, but again, it's not a snap-on or a Matco. And that's probably why I'm okay with it. But let's get this off. All right, got the caliper loose. Now it says to go ahead and take the shock off. It says 18mm bolts, which is right. 18mm bolts, top and bottom. And just go ahead and work it out of there. So now all I gotta do, got it loose, pull the shock out, and we'll continue on. All right, shock's out. Like I said, don't care about that. It's done anyway because it literally has no gas. Actually, I'll show you real quick. Look, it's nothing. It only hardly even work. Oh, it shock absorbs. Now, I shouldn't be able to stop a shock absorber with my hands. So, you know, and it's hard to push back down, but I shouldn't be able to stop it with my hands that easy. But now it says to go ahead and take the control arm. So basically I have to take the 1 16" nut off the upper ball joint and get it out of the way. All right, so we got the nut off. Now we got to dislodge it. So let's see how it's gonna work. Wow. There. It actually did. A lot of times those were stuck. I was actually expecting that to be super stuck and I'd have to get the fork in there and pry it apart. But it come out, so let's move on to the next. I think now they're telling us to go ahead and take the upper hardware apart up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to mark this so I can at least go back on pretty close to where it was set. All right, so we have our second surprise. It totally came loose like it was nothing. So let's see if this side will do the same. And hopefully, yeah, it's going to do the same. So we will take this side out. And what I did is, like I said, I got a little paint and I sprayed it in here. That way you can kind of see where it's at. So when I pull it back out, you just kind of line it back up. Easy. Now, if you guys aren't familiar, what I was talking about is these right here. So basically what it is, this is your cam, that's what adjusts your camper on these, and I kind of just trying to get it as close as I can. It's still going to have to be aligned, but at the same time, while we're on our way to take it there, I'd like to at least drive decent enough to get. All right, and there's the old one. Get it started back in here. Get that out of the way. That's all there is to it. You get the bolt started back in it, tighten it up, and put it back on the mark as close as you possibly can. All right, so I've just about got the upper control arm back on the truck. Literally all I had to do was get everything loose up here. Got this loose, and I put it back in there. And I kind of got them sort of tight to where I can see where the paint's gone. It'll be pretty close, and now I just gotta, you know, put a jack under the knuckle here, jack it up to it, and put the bolt on, put the nut on the bolt, and we're good. So let's keep on trucking. Okay folks, and that's why when you're doing shocks on trucks, you usually want to make sure that your nut on the bolt is on the inside, because the bolt had gotten damaged on this one where they have, you know, hit a piece of debris or whatever, you know, during four-wheeling or whatever it may be, and I had to cut the end of the bolt off in order to get the nut off. So now you know. All right, so here comes the fun part. Now I've got to pull the front differential out of it. Half shafts, got to come loose and all that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get that loose, get that pulled down, and then that way we got to grind some fins off of it so everything will fit. And then we got to put the bracketry on, and then we're getting close. So let's go ahead and get that started and make it happen. All right, so I went ahead and got the differential out. Now there's the differential, and here in a minute I'm gonna have to grind these fins down right here, like the instructions call for. But first, I've got to go underneath here, and I've got to cut a lower bracket out, because it's not needed on this kit. And honestly, it was a hindrance to get it out of there anyway, so it'd probably make it easier. So let's go ahead and get that cut out, and then we'll get these ground and start doing something. All right, it says to cut the lower diff mount. So let's go ahead and we'll take the saw and I'll just whack that off there. After I get a new blade. All right, back with a new blade. So I am going to cut it off about right there. One down. So now it says to remove the passenger side bracket, which is this right here. Now I'll go ahead and get this stuff out of the way, and then we'll start putting the other bracketry on and get ready to put it back in after I grind the fins on that. All right, so this is the new drop down bracket, and it says to install it with the supplied hardware, which is the bushings, and the crush sleeves, and then reinstall with the factory bolts. Uh-oh. All right. All right, now it's ready to go on the truck. So that's all we got to do is get it on there. All right, so let's go ahead and get this on here. If you look, it'll only go one way, because if you put it on too much, then it's way too tall. So
take on the world.
All right, now it says to install the upper bracket. So let's go ahead and do that. Hey folks, so I've got to take a break from this for a second. I just had some gravel delivered, so I figured, hey, thought you guys might like to see me spread it out and what it looks like when we're done. So it is grind time. Now, what I'm getting ready to do is I'm getting ready to grind the place where I cut the bracket off to kind of smooth it up. I'm also going to grind the fins on the front differential. Now, the instructions say to go ahead and grind the lower mount once you get that cut, but personally, I didn't see the difference between getting the grinder out and doing it all together or step by step. I had to have the grinder out anyway. So either way you do it, should be just fine. But I'm gonna set this down. The other reason why I did it is because I wanted to get all the brackets on there to make sure it was gonna fit properly before I started grinding this and that, to make sure everything was gonna line up. And what I did find is on the upper differential brackets, there is a little radius piece, if you're familiar with it when you get the kit, that sometimes doesn't match the bracket. And I chose to, instead of cutting the bracket and grinding the bracket on the truck, I actually just changed the radius of the block, the drop down bracket that they supplied in the kit. One or two reasons. Basically, it was easier. Second, I don't really want to have to take more off the frame than is necessary. Now, a lot of you folks are going to say, oh, that's rough country. Rough country lifts are garbage. Rough country's this. Not exactly. Any lift kit you get is basically, you're gonna have to modify something. It doesn't matter if it's Skyjacker, if it's super lifts, if it's BDS, custom offsets, and you're gonna have to modify something. And there's a reason behind this as well. Because a lot of folks don't know, rough country just doesn't make lifts for rough country. Rough country supplies suspension lifts for real trucks, Summit, custom offsets, and several others that if you actually do enough research, you'll realize that it's all the same thing. It's just rebranded rough country lifts. And the reason that is because rough country itself is owned by TSG. Now, TSG owns several other companies and their subsidiaries that they do business with. Now, what it all boils down to is if you order a lift, say from Custom Offsets, and this Custom Offsets brand, well, guess what? Rough Country makes Custom Offsets lifts for them. How do I know this, you wonder? Well, I'll tell you how I know, because I actually went to Tennessee and did a tour. They informed me that these are the companies that they make lifts for. A little insider information in case you didn't know. So some of the best brand name lifts out there has ties to rough country. So what is the difference? Well, I'll answer that for you. There is none. It's all the same. So if you get a lift, you're getting a lift. More than likely it's going to have design aspects from rough country and rough country's milling, which is made in I think it's Daysburg or Days, I can't remember the name, but anyway, it's in Tennessee. And I went there and I can't remember the name, but anyway, now you know. All right, so we have got this thing ground / cut down, and I'll show you what I did. So if you look, I went ahead and cut the pins down here, and then I smoothed everything out, and that's what they're looking for. I actually went a little bit more than what they recommended due to the fact that from experience, I know that we're gonna run into some issues with rubbing on the brackets. Not doing that, we're gonna actually have this truck to where it's functional. That's our whole thing. Everything has to be functional that we do here in the shop. So that's the reason I did that. Now you also saw me use the saw, the reciprocating saw. You also see me use the die grinder. Now the reason I did that with the reciprocating saw is because I can just kind of cut this and follow along with the lines here and cut this off. And what it does, it just takes the material away much faster. So I just kind of cut this way, and then I cut an angle right down here following the line of the transfer case. And that's the reason why I did that. And then I just took the regular grinder and the die grinder and cleaned it up. And the other reason is because, well, it's clogging my grinder up really bad. So I had to do something to hog some material off there fairly quickly. So that way I'm not spending hours upon hours grinding this thing. But let's go get this thing cleaned up. All right, so we got this thing all cleaned up. Now it's time to put it back in the truck. So there it is after we've got all the dirt, nastiness off, and you can actually see a little bit better how I ground it. So like I said, I just kind of really went in through here and got all that out of the way. So that way there should be no issues from banging or hitting any of the drop down brackets. So let's get into the truck. Got it back in the truck, not that big of a deal. I just used a transmission jack, lifted it right into place, put the bolts in. Now it's just a matter of getting a lower bracket on and getting everything lined up. I did leave it loose, so now once I get that all tightened up, we'll just be ready to go back together with the rest of the parts. So, okay, so I didn't put this side together yet. And the reason I didn't put this side together is because when you try to move this thing around in there, it makes it much easier. Like I said, I pulled the half shaft out of it right there. That's because I just needed the room, so that way I could get everything to fit properly and adjust it correctly. That way all my pinion angles and everything stay the same, the way they're supposed to be, and I can put the bolts back in the locations where they need to be and then check it with my gauge. Now, a lot of you aren't going to have a gauge, but you can actually make something that'll work. Ruler with the little pivot on it that'll actually work. Now, here's something we found. Now, if you look right here, I found a grease fitting buried in the muck on this thing that I didn't know existed, and apparently they didn't either. So I'm going to try to get this thing to take some grease before I put it back together. Luckily it's not loose, so we caught it in time. Hopefully when I put some grease in it, it doesn't become loose, but we're going to find out. All right, let's see if this thing's going to take a little grease. Yes, I am using a glove because this stuff is nasty. Oh, wow. It's actually taking some grease. So that's a good sign. Looks like it's going to grease itself on up, and then I will go ahead and reassemble everything. All right, so I want to show you something I ran into here. Now, this is entirely too long if you're putting these stabilizer links in there for the front stabilizer bar. So I'm going to cut that off. And like I said, this is handy. I just happen to have it with me, so like I said, it'll take me just a second to whack it off here. I could use the die grinder, but I want to use this instead because it's, well, just easier and probably about as quick, if not faster. And there we go, it is gone. So that way I'll do that on both sides. No, we don't have to worry about anything interfering with that, and we can still get the nut off. So okay, so now it's time to go ahead and reinstall the drive shaft and your new torsion keys, but I'll show you what I got into first. So the drive shaft that's in this truck had a grease fitting on it in the yoke because it has a slip yoke on it. In order to do this install, you're dropping down the front differential. Well, that's going to have to extend just about 1.5 inches. So if it's froze up, I couldn't get it to extend or, you know, push together in order to try to get it out. So I ended up having to get another drive shaft made. Luckily, we have a place here that we can actually take the drive shaft and he'll make it to the dimensions that we need and put the slip yoke back together just like new. So I'm going to put the drive shaft back in, and then I'm going to go ahead and install the torsion keys, and that stuff was stuck, so I had to slide the cross member back. You're already aware of that, but I'm going to show you what I got to do to get it back in. Okay, so the install is going to go the same way we took it off. So basically you've got a divot right here, and that's what the tool is going to rest in. It's going to clamp up here, and it's going to push the torsion bar up enough to where we can get the key in right here. So that's just kind of where we're at. But like I said, the key, and that's the divot. You don't want to miss that. Don't put it in this one when you go to put it back, because that's where the bolt goes. You don't want to do that. But we'll get it set up here. All right, so had to get the heavy duty one out here because that older one was about to start having some issues because it's been used and it was starting to bow, and it's not really heavy duty. And I don't know, did I ever explain to you how these actually work? So this right here, there's a hole up here in the top of the cross member. This goes up in the hole, sits in a hole, and then the divot, you already know, tighten it up, which is similar to the way the other one was made, but all right, here we go. Let's let this thing down. All right, it is officially done. So like I say, big improvement. You can see just by the difference of the space here in the wheel wells. I think it's, you know, a huge improvement over stock. You know, this truck, it looks like it might be a little higher in the front than it is in the rear right now. It'll probably settle once I move it around a little bit. If it doesn't, I'll have to let it back down on the torsion keys, but I set it to where it was beforehand, so I'm thinking we're pretty close either way, within, you know, ½ inch or so, if it's not. But something's missing. I mean, we've got this big gap here, but we have a solution for that, and they're in the back of the truck. So that's what we're going to be doing next, is actually throwing the wheels and tires on this thing in the next episode and seeing what it looks like. But for now, unfortunately, that's all we got time for. So if you like what we're doing, you want to see more of it, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.